Everybody loves a good mystery, so long as it's solved by the end. And while fiction is typically great at giving us solved mysteries, real life often fails to provide the answers we crave to the questions that haunt us. So, today we're going to take a look at some historical mysteries people want solved. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other mysteries you would like investigated. Okay, get your magnifying glass and your deerstalker hat, because the game is afoot. Mentioned in several Egyptian narratives, the so-called Sea Peoples came from the sea, with ancient accounts telling us only that they came from the sea in their warships and none could stand against them. And that's most of what we know. So, video over. No, there's plenty more. The Sea Peoples migrated throughout the Mediterranean around 1200 BCE, bringing chaos to Anatolia, Crete, and Egypt. They may have even destroyed the Hittite Empire, presumably because they didn't know when they'd be back that way again. All in all, the Sea Peoples sound like major badasses. An inscription from Pharaoh Ramses III's funerary temple said of them, "No land could stand before their arms, being cut off one at a time. They desolated people, and its land was like that which had never come into being." If the mighty Pharaoh is impressed, you're made of something strong. Modern scholars believe that the Sea Peoples were likely a confederation of marauders, some from an area that corresponds to modern-day Palestine, which is why the Sea Peoples are often associated with the biblical Philistines, who were residents of the area. That being said, all we know for sure is that evidence found in 2019 from the Philistine city of Ashkelon indicates one subset of the Sea Peoples population was related to peoples in southern Europe. But will their identity ever be known with certainty? We'll just have to wait and see. Much like Avengers: Age of Ultron and Transformers: Age of Extinction, all ages eventually come to an end, apparently with loud CGI robots. But the sudden end of the Bronze Age between 1250 or 1150 BCE has created speculation among historians for centuries. While there's no written documentation from the period, archaeological evidence indicates a substantial shift in social, cultural, and political stability throughout the Mediterranean. No one knows why, but guesses include an environmental change, natural disaster, or large-scale warfare. Michael Bay, you're off the hook. This time. During the collapse, the Mycenaean civilization fell. The Hittite Empire crumbled, and Egypt neared the end of the New Kingdom. Those pesky Sea Peoples, who were apparently lousy neighbors, were also troublesome to Mycenae and the Hittites, perhaps one of several factors contributing to the overall decline. Interestingly, in 2013, researchers studied pollen from ancient lake sediment and found there was a massive environmental crisis occurring simultaneously to these external threats. The resulting crop failures and famine would have led to migrations of people, weakened economic systems, and social unrest, all of which could have contributed to the Great Collapse. Yet no one knows with certainty what happened to Bronze Age, and if someone figures it out, there's a gold medal ready for them. All right, guess it would be bronze. Alexander the Great did a whole lot of conquering, which is the type of career decision that gets a lot of cities named after you, for a time anyway. And within the city of Alexandria, which was such a place named after Alexander, if for some reason you couldn't tell, stood a museum that included the Library of Alexandria. Founded by General Ptolemy Soter at the urging of historical mega-nerd Demetrius of Phaleron, the library was designed to accommodate intellectuals with thousands of texts, laboratories, lecture areas, and facilities. No free Wi-Fi, though. At its height, the library at Alexandria was supposed to have housed thousands, if not millions, of works by Mediterranean authors. Philosophical writings from Aristotle stood next to ancient Buddhist religious texts, all carefully collected, copied, and translated by the library's in-house scholars. Yeah, but how was their Far Side collection? Exactly what happened to the library remains shrouded in mystery. In one version, as Julius Caesar pushed into the Alexandrian harbor in 48 BCE, he set it aflame, a fire that quickly spread throughout the city, destroying the library. In another telling, the library escaped the worst of the fire, but documents kept at a warehouse near the port were destroyed as early as 20 BCE. Other theories take religious bends. By the 4th century CE, remaining library facilities at Alexandria were targeted by Roman Emperor Theodosius I to eliminate paganism within the empire. And with the rise of Islam during the 7th century, Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab was accused of destroying any and all works that contradicted the Quran. Less dramatic historians dismiss many of those stories as apocryphal and have suggested that the library was never exactly destroyed. Rather, it slowly declined in size and relevance over the course of many generations and was replaced by numerous smaller, less famous libraries all around the Mediterranean. Regardless of why or when the contents of the Library of Alexandria ceased to exist, scholars believe that the loss of knowledge was a huge setback for civilization. Just another great reminder to support your local library. Genghis Khan, ruler of the largest contiguous empire to have ever existed, perished on a military campaign in 1227 CE. According to legend, Genghis Khan wanted his final resting place to remain secret, even ordering anyone associated with his funeral procession to be slain. No wonder everyone's always worried about the wrath of Khan. His burial site remains one of history's great mysteries, although it's largely believed he was interred in northeast Mongolia. Limited access to Mongolia through the 1990s, after the Russian occupation came to an end, has only recently allowed for investigation into the exact location of his tomb. However, this search is controversial for Mongolians who don't want the final resting place of the great Khan exposed. Also, you know that tomb is cursed. Smart money might put the tomb around the Khenti Mountains, home to the great leader in his youth. But excavations and satellite imagery have thus far failed to put this mystery to rest. Khan! The settlement founded by a group of British colonists in 1587, known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke, was, after just 3 years, lost. They probably should have seen that twist coming. Located on Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina, the Roanoke colony was governed by John White, who returned to England soon after arriving in the New World. White, who left his wife, daughter, and granddaughter behind, ventured across the Atlantic for supplies, but found no signs of human life when he returned in 1590. So, what happened to them? One theory is that the colonists were attacked and slain by native tribes, but others believe those natives took the colonists in and saved their lives. It's also possible the colonists attempted and failed to sail back to Europe, or moved inland in the hopes of finding better conditions. In a twist worthy of the TV show Lost, there's a lot of that word going around, the only clue the colonists left behind was the word Croatoan, carved into the wall around the settlement, perhaps indicating the settlers moved to a nearby island occupied by the Croatan tribe. In the centuries since the Roanoke colony vanished, researchers determined that widespread crop failure and drought in 1587 and 1589 may have contributed to the settlers' fate, but the how is still unclear. Items found during excavations have yielded mixed results, never fully providing a clear link to Roanoke, while DNA evidence from folks currently living in the region has been collected to determine any ancestral ties to the colonists. Unfortunately, because we don't live in a CSI Miami episode, finding a way to match current DNA with anything from Roanoke settlers remains challenging. So this missing persons case remains open. Jack the Ripper, understandably voted the worst Briton of the 19th century in 2006, and no, that is not a joke, took the lives of many London women in 1888. But his identity still remains a mystery. Active in poor areas of the city, the Ripper also dissected his victims' bodies with a technique that some believe suggested anatomical knowledge. And pretty much everyone agrees he was nuttier than a marzipan log, which is a technical medical term. Of the 5 victims widely agreed to be claimed by Jack, the first target was Mary Ann Nichols, slain on August 31st, 1888. The murders of Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Edowesson, and Mary Jane Kelly then took place between September and November of that year. So we know he, loves autumn. He kind of seems like a pumpkin spice guy. Despite his catchy handle, no one actually knows the Ripper's real name. The moniker Jack the Ripper comes from a letter sent to the media by the purported culprit, but experts widely agree it was a forgery. Additional letters were sent to Scotland Yard, but none of them provided any substantive leads, likely because they were also forged. Without explanation, the killing spree came to an end in November of 1888. and no further activity was ever reliably attributed to the Ripper. Well over 100 suspects have been investigated since, but none of them have formed any kind of consensus, leaving Jack the Ripper's identity unanswered. He could be behind you right now. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the center of one of the best-known conspiracy theories in history, continues to spark more questions than answers. And the sheer number of suggestions as to what happened on November 22, 1963, makes the whole thing nearly impossible to make any firm judgments about. On one hand, some people believe Lee Harvey Oswald did, in fact, act alone, affirming the findings of the Warren Commission. Others believe that questions about whether or not Oswald could have fired 3 bullets that struck Kennedy suggest a second shooter, possibly on the infamous grassy knoll. Whether or not there was more than one shooter, potential motivations behind Kennedy's death have also been assessed ad nauseum. Links to the Mafia, Cuba, and the Soviet Union accompany notions that the U.S. government carried out the act. It even led to a second conspiracy, the one to cover it up. Because some documents from the Kennedy assassination investigation were sealed, belief in conspiracy grew unfettered in the decades following his passing. However, to date, there's been no definitive evidence that anyone but Lee Harvey Oswald was involved, no matter what Kevin Costner said in that Oliver Stone movie. Paging Robert Langdon, the contents of the Vatican's secret archives have been sparking conspiracy theories for centuries. Now named the Vatican Apostolic Archive, or VAA, that's fun to say, the institution's holdings include millions of letters, official writings, and papal bulls. And while it's not as secret as its previous name implies, the contents of the archives span 53 miles of shelves, as well as an underground vault used by researchers and scholars. Hopefully there's a holy water slide too. The archives weren't open for research until 1881, and even then, not all the documents were made available for viewing. But that doesn't mean that some interesting stuff hasn't come out. And with 12 centuries of material at issue, skeptics believe the Vatican archives contain information the Church simply doesn't want the world to know, whether it be involvement in secular affairs, investigations into demonic possessions, or the secret last chapter of the Da Vinci Code. Okay, maybe not the last one, but maybe? So what do you think? Will any of these mysteries ever truly be solved? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.